If you've been hearing a lot lately about smart glasses and AI glasses and camera glasses, and you are someone who remembers Google Glass, you might be thinking, have we learned nothing? Because the answer to this question posed in early 2013, will consumers accept Google Glass? Spoiler, no. Now, there were a lot of reasons that Google Glass failed. Some was just bad marketing strategy. There were also design issues, more limited functionality than people were expecting, and also it's just really expensive. But those things are not why people were called glass holes. So let's talk about privacy and social norms. I got the impression at the time that Google was taken a bit off guard by the intense negative reaction by a lot of people not using this technology. And most people weren't physically attacked, but there was a pretty significant backlash. So, a big part of this was concern about the ability to be discreetly recorded and also the uncertainty about whether you were being recorded. So, a big component of it was privacy, but another was a social norm issue with respect to divided attention. Like the idea that someone could be looking right at you and yet they're actually browsing their email. So, there's a long history of technologies failing when there aren't clear value propositions or when that value is like disproportionately felt. So, this paper about Google Glass, I think, makes a really good point, which is that one of the problems was that the people bearing the privacy risks were also not benefiting at all from the technology. And I'm sure you could think of many more examples of that kind of problem with emerging technology. But also with Google Glass, it's worth keeping in mind that this was over 10 years ago and privacy norms have shifted. And I would argue this is not a great thing, but the reality is that today people are more likely to expect the possibility of being recorded in public. Thanks, TikTok. So if you think about today's technology, Meta's glasses, for example, we have a situation where unfortunately people might have a lower expectation of privacy, but at the same time, these are much more discreet than Google Glass. So this paper published last year looked at Meta's Ray-Ban Stories glasses. And one of the things they found was that this type of social stigma around Google Glass is lingering. So one thing that's happening now is that some camera glass users are basically thinking, well, I don't want to be a glass hole. So a lot of the camera glasses users in the study felt an emotional burden to protect bystanders' privacy. And this was a challenge in part because the indicator lights on these things are too subtle, but also just people not knowing what they are. So, one conclusion is that there's both a technical and non technical design space here. On the one hand, it needs to be much more obvious when people are recording, but also maybe there needs to be more like public education around what these glasses are, what they look like, what they can do. So, who bears the privacy burden?